Welcome to Talking the WCASD Way, a podcast where we share stories, partnerships, and ideas that shape the Westchester Area School District. I'm Kalia Reynolds, and in each episode we'll highlight voices from our schools and community with a special focus on elevating the voices of our students. Today we're diving into the topic of purposeful assessments, and when we hear the word assessment, many of us think of only state tests, but here in the Westchester Area School District, assessments are so much more than that. They're tools that help teachers understand where students are, celebrate their growth, and make sure that every child gets the support that they need. To help us unpack this, I'm joined today by Jim Ronayne, our Supervisor of Assessment and Accountability. So Jim, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yay. So we'll dive in because I know that this is your work. This is what you do every day, all day. And one of the things we want to make sure is that our families, that all of our stakeholders in our district understand what purposeful assessment means, in term form, but also what does it mean for students. So talk with us about that.
Sure. So as you mentioned in your introduction, assessment when it comes to education has these connotations of, the big state tests, the PSSAs, the keystones, but also like those tests and quizzes, real high pressure situations where students are sitting at a desk, they're showing their knowledge in one way on a piece of paper in a quiet room. And the idea of a purposeful assessment really pushes on that and shifts this idea that assessment is an opportunity to measure student learning and give both students and teachers feedback about what learning is happening in the classrooms. And that's the whole idea behind purposeful assessments, that as we plan our assessments, we're making sure that we're being very clear of why we're giving it. And that reason is never to put a grade in the grade book. It's about understanding who the student is, what they're learning, where they're at in those learning progressions, but also giving the student something they can reflect on. A good purposeful assessment will have feedback so the student understands where they are with their learning and where they need to go. It also provides feedback to the teachers as well. Yeah. What part of their instruction has been working really well? What may they need to adapt? What they may need to reteach? What may they need to revisit? So that this whole framework of purposeful assessment is about shifting away from testing as an event and more moving it as a constant measure of the learning process.
That's huge. I think your word feedback seems much more approachable and accessible than assessment or even tests, because that can produce anxiety for folks, particularly for kids. So talk with us about the purposeful assessment. Why is this important? How is this impactful for students?
So it really helps the students find ownership of their learning. Whereas a test or quiz or the PSSA is just a score on a piece of paper. It doesn't tell them what they know. It doesn't tell them where they're moving next. A purposeful assessment really puts the student in the driver's seat. It helps build that ownership. Like I said, it gives them good, meaningful feedback and allows them to kind of track and see their growth throughout the school year.
So to build off of that, from quick check-ins during a lesson, at the end of a unit in particular, our students take part in many different types of assessments and ways that they can show what they know. How do these different kinds of assessments help teachers to understand what students need to know and how to best support them?
Sure. So our students in the classrooms today, they're not just learning skills. It's not just rote memorization. Where we are in the learning process as we prepare our students to be future ready, we're looking at skills, applications, synthesis of information to new situations that they may experience in their future. So that range of assessments really does that, where those quick check-ins are looking to make sure that a student understands this term or this topic or this idea. And then as they move through and they're engaging with more complex assessments, it's about them taking that knowledge that they have and applying it in unfamiliar situations that may be relevant to their future. So instead of just remembering dates or remembering definitions, students have to analyze documents and understand the impact of those documents in a historical context. So having that range of assessments allows the students to see how the information they're learning becomes meaningful in the skills that they have to put out there. But it also allows the teacher to better diagnose where the student might be having issues. Is the student not retaining those simple facts and information, or is the student having a hard time synthesizing pieces of information from different areas and applying it in an unfamiliar situation. So it's really important in a purposeful assessment system that you're not just looking at memorization and recall, that you have assessments that measure each of those skills as you move up through the different depth of knowledge.
One of the things I heard you say is a system, and so this is it's a lot of work for a teacher to be able to tend to the needs of those that are in the classroom. Think about what's the best way for them to show. I heard you use the word evidence. Where would you say we are in building that system and engaging in this purposeful assessment work?
So we're, as a district, we're right at the beginning of this process. Some of our teachers have been doing this and do it really, really well. But across our district, right now our curriculum supervisors are working on building these systems for each of the different content areas, helping teachers understand what it means to create an assessment, that it's not just a quiz you're giving at the end of the week. Really having them think about, what do you want the students to be able to know or do, and how are they going to show that? And then more importantly, when they design those assessments, what do we do when the students don't know or can't show that evidence? So as a district, we're moving there. This is the second year that we've really started to focus on the purposeful assessment. So it's that growing process.
We talked a lot about educators. We've been talking about students, thinking about our parents. We're both parents, and parents often wonder what happens after students take the test. What happens after assessment is done? Talk with us about how teachers use the results, use what they know, what they've gleaned from students, to help students to improve and make sure that if they need extra support, if they need extra help, either because they know it already, or I should say, not extra help. If they don't know it, they need extra help. If they do know it, like, they've already mastered this content. What do they do? How do we help parents to understand what this assessment framework means?
Absolutely. So with purposeful assessments, it's really all about using the data at the end of it. An assessment should not just exist for that moment in time. It's really what happens after we give the assessment and we look at the data. Our teachers have a number of different tools to help them understand the results. Those quick exit ticket or quick moment checks or exit tickets or little checks for understanding. The teachers can use that right away. It's real easy. You know, this student didn't get it, this student got it. I can readjust and pivot. Some of the more complex assessments that we give, the teachers have the opportunity to look at that data with their professional learning community, which are teachers that have a similar grade level or similar content as them, and they can analyze that data as a group to look and delve into some deeper trends. As a class, where are my students struggling? As a grade, where are our students struggling? As a school, where are our students struggling? And what are we going to do about that? Or where are our students showing they're learning really well, and how can we capitalize on that to get them do the next best thing? And working with them to design learning experiences based off of those results.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Talk with me about what's a point of celebration and a point of challenge. This is a lot, and one of the things I heard you say is that there are some teachers that are doing this well, but we're only in year 2 of this intentional work. So I'm sure what brings you joy and excites you in the work as you continue to support, and what are some areas that you're like, we need a little bit more time delving into or unpacking this?
So something that brings me joy is just really both the teachers and the students' excitement when we talk about purposeful assessment. When we're talking about this idea of like shifting away from assessment being a test or a quiz and being a meaningful engagement of student learning, both students and teachers are excited about that. Nobody wants to come in and sit and take a test on a Friday. That's not fun for anybody. No student wants to do that. They want to show their learning in new and inventive ways. And teachers want to have that as well. They want to see their students apply information in all types of different ways. And purposeful assessment gives that kind of avenue for that. So just the amount of people who are excited about this idea, and like I said, they've been doing it, but they've never had like a name for it. So now that they have a name for it and they can see like, this is where our district is going, that empowerment is really refreshing and really good. Some of the areas that we're still kind of working on and struggling is just helping teachers analyze the data from these assessments and understanding what that means and how do we use that to drive instruction. That's a complex thing that's really not taught in teacher education programs. It's becoming more prevalent, but for teachers who are 10, 15 years out, they may not have received that when they were there. So getting teachers to look at their assessment results and have an understanding of what that means for their students and for their instruction is still a struggle. But as a district, that's part of my role, working with our instructional coaches to help teachers better understand what those results mean and how they can better their students' learning experiences because of it.
Huge. Thank you. So we have plans to introduce special projects where students can show what they've learned in creative and real-world ways. I mean, one of the things that's been a point of priority for us is agency and engagement, and making sure, to your point earlier, that there's ownership and that it's not something that's this dreaded experience, but it's something that energy and excitement can be brought forth. Can you talk with us a little bit about what some of those projects will look like, and how it'll give students an opportunity to really lean into their strengths and determine how they want to showcase that?
Sure. So right now I'm working with our curriculum supervisors. They're working to build common summative assessments, and what that really is, it replaces like the end of unit test. And these summative assessments are really meant to be an opportunity for students to apply their learning in a relevant but unfamiliar situation. So something that they weren't doing every day as they were learning this material, but it's going to be an experience that could be relevant to a career or a path that they may take down later in life. And in those, performance tasks, as you said, there's lots of opportunities for student choice. It's not simply, here you've got to write an essay about this topic, here are the expectations, what it is. Those performance tasks have more open-ended opportunities for students to show their learning in a variety of ways that, will resonate with the students and make them feel empowered that they can really show their learning. They just may not have been able to do it before because they were put into this box of you've got to do it on a test, or you've got to do it on a quiz, or you have to do it in an essay. These performance tasks allow the students to have that creativity to show their learning in new and creative ways.
Huge. As we close, share what's one thing you want parents to have as a takeaway from purposeful assessments. What's one lasting point you want to be sticky for families?
So I think one of the biggest pieces, and I've mentioned a couple times, the shift from, tests and quizzes to purposeful assessment. It's the idea that, a test or a quiz, that moment in time, doesn't represent a student's learning. I still remember times where I would come home with like a 70% on a test or a quiz, and my parents would sit me down and we'd have this deep conversation about, this is how you can do better. Which worked at the time, but it really could lead itself into a much better conversation of, this is where you are right now, let's talk about where this can go. So having those conversations with your kids as they bring home assignments, as they bring home assessment results, saying, this is where you are right now, let's talk about where we want to be and how we're going to get there. That reinforces those reflective conversations that the teachers are already having with the students. And by having similar conversations with your students, it shows that there's that unified front when it comes to these pieces, that it's not living as, the teacher's expecting one thing and the parents are expecting another. Reflecting on our assessments and talking about this is not who you are, but this is where you're at, really helps move that process, the learning process along.
Yeah, this is not who you are, but where you are, where you're at. Thank you for that. Well, thank you for helping us to better understand how assessments work here in our district and how they're designed with purpose. And the purpose is to celebrate learning, to focus on growth, and give students a voice and how they're showing what they know. So thank you for your time today, Jim.
Of course, anytime.
Thanks.
Yep.
Because our district is full of stories.